Hello. Today I'd love to share with you my top 5 lessons from marking community and family studies over the last 16 years. So if you haven't heard my story, back in 2007, when I was about 25, 26, I had only been teaching CAFS for about 3 or 4 years, and I decided that I'd put my hand up for HSC marking. So I had heard about it, obviously, through my colleagues at my school, and I thought it might be a good idea because I really loved CAFS to put my name in the ring. And I thought, I don't know what I was thinking, because often it now takes teachers a really long time to actually get HSC marking, maybe 4 or 5 years. But for me back then, I kind of got it in my first few years of teaching CAFS back in 2007. So I don't know who I thought I was, but I thought, yep, I'm going to put my hand up. I love CAFS. I really love teaching it. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to put my hand up because I want to be part of that experience. I had heard so many great things about it, so many learnings, and I thought, yep, now's the time to do it. So I went into it with having no really clear expectations about what marking was going to be like. I was really looking forward to obviously marking CAFS, and CAFS was relatively new back then. So it had only kind of been going for 2001 was the first HSC, I think. So yeah, 5 years. And I was like, yep, love CAFS. I'm going to dive in. Anyway, so when I first applied for marking, I got the most rudest shock of my life when I went there, because I had already had these ideas in my head about what success looks like in community and family studies, but that was all completely blown apart once I got to marking. And back in those days, it was very different to what it is now for the HSC. Obviously, back then it was in person at Homebush. And I remember coming kind of into the cattle sheds, and I was on this big, long, massive table. Sondra Munro was my first senior marker. Huge shout out to Sondra. And if those of you guys who know Sondra, she's an absolute wizard in CAFS. She still teaches CAFS, and I feel very blessed to have her as my leader back in 2007. But I was kind of, I felt really nervous, obviously, coming into it. And I was really young. Like I was surrounded by these really experienced CAFS teachers who knew their stuff and loved the course like I did, but they had really been doing that for a while. So I kind of went there and I did HSC marking. I really loved it. It was really fast, and I was able to make some really quick judgments on how the kids were going. I was given a short answer that year, so it was literally, I think, 5 questions. Whipped through them. I'm a bit of a fast reader, and those of you guys who have done HSC marking before, you kind of heard this story that a colleague of mine started to spread some rumours out there that I was a bit of a speed marker, and I had done a speed reading course, thanks Des, but I obviously hadn't, but I just kind of could pick up pieces along the way. So today I'm sharing with you guys my 5 top lessons over the last 16 years, all the way back in 2007 when I first started marking. In 2009, I was provided the opportunity to be a judge for HSC marking, which again absolutely blew everything out of the water. And if you've been thinking about doing judging, please put your name up for it. You will absolutely love it. But that was a great year. And in 2010, I was actually appointed as a senior marker, which is like a head teacher of marking. You kind of have a whole big group of teachers that you're supporting. Anyway, fast forward to 2018, when I was actually appointed as a supervisor of marking across New South Wales. Some of these lessons I'm going to share with you guys today are as a result of that whole experience of HSC marking for the last 16 years. So let's unpack. The number one is around positive marking. So I really used to love to share with my marking teams that it has to be global marking. You can't just go with your gut and go, yep, I think it's a 2 out of 5. You obviously have to use evidence to actually guide your mark. So no half marks. If you're still doing half marks are not part of marking in the HSC. And I always used to share, presenting across New South Wales, but also with my marking team to say no half marks in HSC. So please make sure you're not still using half marks. And then I then transferred that skill all the way through to my junior. So they didn't get used to that half mark. It was either a 3 or a 4. If you're erring on like a 2.5, it's a 3. But if you think it's like a 3.5, it's a 4. Always go up. Always have that positive marking in the back of your mind. So Obviously, we need to mark to what the kids have done, not what's not in there or what they could be doing or could have said. It has to be what they've actually included in their response. So obviously, keeping that in mind, we shouldn't be taking marks away from the kids. And I still do see that when I coach some of our CAFS teachers across New South Wales, that people are still kind of saying, oh, well, they didn't do that, so I'm going to hold back. Do not hold back. Give the kids the marks that they deserve. The other thing I'd love to share with you guys is making sure that you're making a judgment of what they've written in terms of their response. So try not to read into it too much. What do they provide? What's their answer around? And then obviously looking at the marking guidelines to help guide and make that final judgment about what mark you're going to give it. And I always used to say to my teachers when I was teaching them or leading them at HSC marking to not go with your gut, but to kind of go, okay, here's the mark range. Now make a decision if it's a 3 or a 4 within that mark range. So the first one is about positive and global marking. The second one I'd love to share with you is to mark to the statewide standard. Now, a statewide standard is set at HSC marking by senior markers. So as I said before, senior markers are like head teachers, team leaders of a HSC marking group. It's up to them to do lots of wide reading before their markers come in, get their head around the statewide standard, how the kids have actually responded to that question, and then go, okay, this is the statewide standard. These are the benchmarks that I want you to mark towards. This is what a 4 looks like out of 8. This is what a 5 looks out of 8. This is what a 7 looks like out of 8. And making sure your team has that understanding about that statewide standard, because it doesn't change. That statewide standard has to be across that whole marking process throughout, the week and a bit that HSC marking happens. So the statewide standard needs to be marked accurately and reliably to that statewide standard. So at HSC marking, what that looks like, after senior markers have done their wide reading, as a result of the marking guidelines, they have to then look for things that, look for responses that match that marking criteria. So if it's an 8 marker, they might go, okay, well, a 3 marker, this is what the kids are typically doing to get a 3 out of 8. And here's a great example of a response that really hits that 3 out of 8. Okay, 5. What does a 5 really look like? Let's do lots of wide reading. Let's really make sure we understand what that 5 really looks like. And then show the markers and say, this is a benchmark. This is a benchmark for what you're looking for in terms of 5 out of 8. And then 7 out of 8. What does that look like across the state? What does a typical 7 look like across New South Wales, across our 9,800 students for that particular response? Okay, here's the benchmark. And I'd really love for you guys to start to take that on within your own HSC marking at school for your trials, for your assessments, for your 11 work, even for juniors, 7 to 10 PE and TAS. We should be looking for that cohort-wide standard across our assessment tasks. Of course, when it comes to HSC, it needs to mirror the performance band descriptors. It can't be like our preconceived idea about what the kids should be writing. It should be to the standard that the kids we've actually set within our cohort. And of course, if it's towards the HSC, of what those performance band descriptors actually depict and reflect. Now, these are some interesting conversations I've had with teachers, both at HSC marking and as relieving head teacher PDHPE, that they had this preconceived idea in their mind about what it should look like, what success should look like, and they would often hold back on their marks. They would mark to, I don't know what standard, not the standard that is the HSC, but they would take marks off for different things. They would say, no, but the kids haven't spoken about all of those aspects of wellbeing, or they've only hit, community organisations once. It needs to be to the standard. It needs to be to the benchmarks that are set by you as a school, you as a cohort, if there's a couple of you guys marking, and making sure that we're actually being consistent across that process. So in terms of that, using our performance band descriptors is a really great way to apply that. Obviously using the rows of grades for year 11, making sure we're actually using that across year 11. Again, not this preconceived idea of what we've got, but also kind of going, okay, well, what does a typical band 5 look like in our standards package? What does a typical band 4 look like in our standards package, or 6 look like? And looking towards our standards packages, they were developed all the way back in our first couple of years of marking CAFS, and they're still used at HSC marking in accordance with bit of an amendment that happened after our amended syllabus in about 2015. So using those performance descriptors alongside your standards package will help you get that understanding of what those band, 3, 4, 5, 6s look like in community and family studies. And if you haven't seen a band 4 in CAFS, you need to find out how you can get access to that. Obviously, it's in the standards package, but going to a colleague or a mentor, or coming to me showing you in marking experience in CAFS that this is what is typical of that particular student, looking for those characteristics. And because I did judging, I know what those characteristics look like. So a typical band 3 kid, I know what they do in class to get that kind of that standard across that HSC year. I can see characteristics in my students that help me guide and get an understanding as to what a typical band 4 looks like across CAFS. Obviously, band 5, I know that. I know what a band 5 kid does to not get to that band 6. I've seen it time and time again, obviously, over the last 16 years of marking CAFS, and of course, working with you guys as CAFS teachers in coaching, and also, especially in the last 5 years as supervisor of marking for CAFS, what the kids are really doing to show those characteristics. So again, if you haven't seen a band 4, 5 or 6 in CAFS, it's really important that you talk to a colleague, you talk to me as your coach and mentor to help you understand what those characteristics look like. Because if you don't know what it looks like, how can you teach the kids to improve on those particular things? And when I first started, I will say, out loud that I had no idea what a band 6 looks like. I kind of had a feeling that some of my kids were working towards a band 6, and 2 of my girls, Ange and Ange, if you've heard me share that story before, they actually got a band 6 in my first year of teaching CAFS. I didn't really help them. I think they got there. So looking to others to help support you. So that was number 2, marking towards a statewide standard. Number 3 is a common thing that I've really embedded in everything I've taught CAFS teachers across New South Wales, but also from my marking experience, is that students still need to plan their answers. And way back when, a really long time ago, when I first started professional learning in CAFS and working with kids in, what are they called? HSC sessions, I developed Run Far. So Run Far, you might have heard it before. It's just my little acronym to help the kids really unpack their response. So the first one is read. Actually read all parts of the question. That was a bit of a common mistake that many kids made in community and family studies for like a typical band 5, was they might have missed parts of a question. They nailed maybe that first part, then they've kind of quickly rushed it, and they're forgetting those parts at the end. The kids really need to take their time and read the whole question in its entirety. The second one, the U stands for underline. So underline parts of the question to help guide them in terms of their plan. So underline, the glossary of keyword at the beginning or in the middle. Maybe underline the syllabus terminology. Underline, do they have to really link it to an example, or is there some sort of guiding point that they're going to actually create their answer about? So if it's about the well-being of young people, make sure they actually get that part there. Or the issues associated with in the workplace with technology. That workplace part is really important. Technology is great, but the workplace part is what they really need to relate back to. So make sure the kids are actually underlining all parts of their question. The other thing they need to be really doing is naming and defining any syllabus terminology, glossary of keyword, in and around their response before they actually start to unpack it. And I think a lot of the kids still don't do that. They don't plan enough. They just go straight to answering the question. And look, now that I know what I know, I teach students in my master classes. I teach you guys to help the kids actually unpack that before they actually put pen to paper. All it takes is 30 seconds to a minute to plan your response using Run Far before you actually put pen to paper in that. So I've done lots of things in the past where I actually make that part of an assessment task. You've got 5 minutes to actually plan your answers. Say, this was for the option, a particular task we did for this. So plan your answer first. You can't actually write in the lines until you've actually planned. So 5 minutes of planning, no writing in the response, and now you can answer it. It just enables the kids to have that really good plan of attack before they start writing. So 30 seconds to a minute is all it takes. The next part is, so that was formulate a plan. Obviously, answering the question is the next stage of run far, actually answering it, using all of the things that are in that question to help them. So using the marks as a guide. Is it a 6 marker? How many lines? Is it an 8 marker? How many lines should I be given? And for CAFS, for every 1 mark, the kids will get 3 lines to actually answer that question. So 1 mark to 3 lines. Please make sure you're being consistent. I've seen this time and time again. People are giving the kids way too much space to write. And for a 3 marker, it's only going to be 9 lines. If they don't do that, they're not going to get used to that skill of writing really succinctly. So writing the lines, using the marks as a guide, and then obviously rereading a response when they actually get stuck in. So the kids kind of, would rush, go to the next one, rush, answer it, go to the next one. Please ensure that the kids are actually rereading their answer, because then they can quickly go in and add anything along the way. So that's number 3. Students need to plan their answers using Run Far. Okay, number 4, and this has probably been something that you've heard me say a lot, but if you haven't heard me say it, I'm going to shout it from the rooftops again, because it's something that is still a common mistake in CAFS. And I reckon it's costing our kids really crucial marks. And that's a glossary of keywords. And I'll get in my soapbox again. So if you've heard me say this, I'll say it again. The glossary of keywords is going to make a huge impact on our kids' marks. I think around about half. So if the kids only just address the content and understanding of the content, they're probably only going to get half marks. So if it's an 8 marker, I reckon 4 marks of that application of that, the actual doing word is missing. They have to actually address it. They have to address their answer through the lens of the glossary of keywords. If it's, our 15 marker for the option, they're really missing out on crucial marks. If they're not doing what the word tells them to do, they're going to be really disadvantaged. So this is something that I teach you guys inside Strive, my signature course, to help improve student writing to fast track success and results in CAFS. If you haven't taken that, please head over to learnit.com/strive. It has all the templates, it has all the resources, the scaffolds, a step-by-step approach to help the kids actually improve their understanding of the glossary to maximize their marks in CAFS. Now, these are all the common glossary of keywords in community and family studies, and the ones that are kind of are offered year after year in our exam. So please make sure you're making that as a focus, a really big focus towards the kids. That application of understanding is still really crucial in our course. So that heavily weighted kind of aspect of the glossary is there, but also using our examples. So if the kids are just giving content, if they're just regurgitating a definition, if they're just getting your Google slides and giving you a definition or regurgitating an idea, or if they're just rote learning, they're not maximizing their success in our course. They're not applying that understanding of CAFS. So I'd love for you guys to really start to unpack that, go back to the basics, go back to the glossary, making sure we really know it, demonstrate it, show the kids what it looks like, and also making sure that, they're using different glossary of keywords for every single different verb that we have. The other thing about using examples is something I've shared with you again. You can tell that I'm a CAFS teacher using acronyms here to help you guys, but I say it through the lens of SWAV. Don't ask me where this came from, but it's just a quick, easy way for me to remember it. But the first one is for SWAV. The S stands for being specific. The kids need to be really specific to the question. So if it's about the employer, if it's about people with disabilities, it's about a person with a vision impairment, if it's about a 40-year-old single mother, they have to talk that through the lens of that particular person. And a lot of the kids are still not doing that at HSC level. The other thing is about being unique, being really unique and different to what's traditionally used. So if you're in the CAFS collective, you would have heard me talk about this a lot, that the kids need to make their answers stand out from the crowd. If you're a HSC marker, you're marking the same question for literally 10 days. It's 7 days now. It's a really long time. You want to have examples that really nail it, really make the kids stand out from the crowd, that are very different to what other people are using, because that extensive knowledge and understanding has to be there. Not just that sound knowledge and understanding and application, that really good extensive knowledge and understanding. Okay, the next one is about applying it. So making sure they demonstrate the depth of knowledge that we want, that depth of knowledge in application of that example. U stands for multiple examples used that are unique throughout it. So not just using the same type of example, and I'll give you the example of like community organisations. A common mistake kids are still making are using things that are very widely known, things like Red Cross, St. Vincent de Paul, what else? Anglicare, all those like charitable organisations, rather than going, Orange Sky Laundry, St. Vinny's, Mission Australia, Father Chris Riley, Youth Off the Streets. There's like multiple examples within that, not just going down that same track. That's not really extensive knowledge. It might be thorough knowledge that they've had all these different examples of charities, but they have to have that really good extensive knowledge and understanding. And the last one is being really explicit. So if it's talking about homeless people, an organisation that supports homeless people in their needs, it has to be really explicit to homeless people. Maybe not just salvos or not just Vinnies, giving really specific examples of what is within that organisation to help with that. So that's Suave. Suave, if you follow me on socials this week, you'll see all those things around Suave and what it can look like for your kids. So that was number 4, application and understanding of the glossary, as well as examples. And the last one, and probably the one that is still a really big learning for me. And back in 2010, when I was appointed as a senior marker, so a senior marker, as I said before, like a head teacher of a CAFS marking group. When I was appointed as a senior marker back in 2010, I was breastfeeding Cass, our eldest. I was really surprised that I was appointed as a senior marker, but I was very blessed, and I did that for about 8 years. And I was given the option to mark. So I was given individuals and work to mark. I loved that option, and I think I marked that for about 4 years. And it blew me away as to what was really required, what we were awarding the kids marks for. And I knew straight away what I wasn't doing back at school to help my kids. I wasn't including wellbeing. I wasn't teaching them about wellbeing in the option for Part C. Now, I know this is something that I've spoken about before, but again, if you haven't followed me for a long time, you would maybe this is new. But the kids need to embed wellbeing in their response for Part C. So in the option in Part C, where they have that big essay, that 15 marker, the kids need to show that really good understanding of how it links back to wellbeing for that particular question. Now, this has been the standard for CAFS since it was first kind of created and written back in 2000. The kids need to embed wellbeing for that part of the HSC. Prior to 2010, the kids had to talk about wellbeing for all the different cores. Now, that was quite hard to talk about wellbeing for parenting, wellbeing for groups. That is no longer the case. When the exam specifications was changed back in 2010, that was changed. So there are still teachers, there are still people presenting professional learning, teaching CAFS teachers that you have to link back to wellbeing for everything. Please hear me really loudly that you do not need to link back to wellbeing for every single question. And I have seen that year after year at HSC marking that the kids are still doing that. They only need to do it for the Part C. So for the 15 marker, the rubric guides us. So that rubric is like those 5 points that guide us in terms of how the kids are going to respond. The reason why I know that it's still a common mistake made across CAFS is because our option results are still significantly lower for that part of the exam. I'm talking kids getting like an average of 5 out of 15, of 8 out of 15, of 7 out of 15. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I don't want my kids to get those sort of marks, half marks of what they deserve. And because they're not linking to wellbeing, they're often missing out on quite a few marks. They're leaving marks on the table because they're not actually addressing that part of the rubric, that part about wellbeing. So let's quickly unpack the 5 top lessons that I've learned in my last 16 years of marking CAFS. So the first one was around positive marking, making sure we have that global marking happening. Number 2 is marking to the statewide standard. Number 3 is making sure the kids actually plan before they put pen to paper. Number 4 is about showing that application. The content will only get you halfway. The kids need to still apply their understanding of the course using the glossary, using Suave examples in their responses. And number 5 is making sure the kids actually embed wellbeing. It's really, really important still in our course. So please let me know if that has been something that you have learnt. Like, have you learnt something new here? Is this a new learning of any of those points? And if you'd like to see what this actually looks like on paper, how to actually mark towards the statewide standard, how to actually mark, like in the HSC. I am offering marking experience in CAFS again very, very soon. So week 2, term 2, May the 4th, 2023, and it'll be again week 2, term 3. So if you haven't done HSC marking before, if you've never in CAFS, if you've never done CAFS HSC marking, it's completely different to food tech. It's different to PDH, it's different to bio, it's different to design technology. It is a completely unique system and beast that is the CAFS HSC. So please head over to the learnet.com/marking CAFS if you would like to join us. But there's only 30 spots available. I want it to be really intimate. I want it to be really practical. And you'll join me as the supervisor of marking for the last 5 years and a highly experienced senior marker in Marty Stein. He's an absolute gem. He's amazing. He's a phenomenal leader in CAFS. So both of us will be walking you through how to mark like the HSC. But if you have any questions at all about marking, about the statewide standard, about how the kids can really be prepared for the HSC, please reach out on socials. kellybell.coach is where you can find me. And I'd love to hear what you got out of today's learning. Thanks so much.